Hi, welcome to Storm the Field. This is the for fans by fans, all college football all the time. I'm Mathis. I'm joined here by Quentin, Rob, and Trey. And we're going to talk our week 2 reactions. Rob, this last week, you told me coming out of week 1, you don't think there's going to be a crazier week this entire year. And we've already been proven wrong on that. And so this is going to be our reaction show. So we do our predictions and then reactions. We have a game in between. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the games we headlined last week with what we picked versus what happened. So we're going to start off. We'll get into this one here in a little bit. We're just going to talk about picks and what actually happened right here. But I think we all picked Bama. Quentin picked Texas to cover pretty heavily, almost get the upset, and they did just that. And you don't get points for covering in our little pick 'em, but we're going to manually override, and so we're almost going to count that as a Quentin W. So that was one of the most impressive games of this week. We'll get into that one here shortly. Next, we have sorry, 1 second. Next, we have Tennessee at Pitt. Do any of y'all remember what you had? Because I remember.
I had Tennessee.
Tennessee.
And Quentin and Trey, they went around playing basketball around this time. Ooh, that one had me nervous. Went to overtime, and that was an ugly, ugly game.
That was a good game.
It was good, but it was ugly. So next,
Yeah.
I have an announcement to make with this one. Anyone who watched our prediction episode, you would know that me and Rob both picked BYU, and Trey and Quentin both picked Bama. And I did not have to tell y'all this, but I'm going to anyways because I'm a stand-up guy. I switched my pick from BYU to Baylor Friday morning because
and Mathis, why did you do that?
they had some receivers out, and this was not a game I was confident in, and I thought that was going to make the difference. And I guess that's what you get.
27 for BYU. He stepped up.
I guess that's.
I forget who he was, but I watched that whole game. That was a very good game.
So I deserve that one, and
you know what I really liked about that, and I don't know if it was because Baylor being a Baptist school and BYU being a Mormon school, but those guys were picking each other up off the ground, patting each other on the back. It was a feel good. I needed a feel good game after my Aggies lost earlier in the day, and that one made me feel good to be human again.
Yeah, we finish off our tiebreaker game, which Rob won the tiebreaker because it's done by points, not by result. We all picked Florida, and they let us down. Hayden Hansen, if you are watching, don't talk to me. I'm mad at you. So disappointed. That got us all wrong. I think we all owe Mark Stoops an apology. So y'all go ahead and say your sorries right now.
So just for the record, the pick 'em, the 4 big games. You 3 were 2-2, and I was 3-1.
Yep.
All right. Just want to go on record with that. And you guys are a lot more in tune and up to speed with all the names and the going.
I just picked teams because I like the color.
Oh, I thought it was because you let your sister pick for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that could work.
That's what it looked like. All right, but that brings our.
Record.
We talk about.
He's an idiot.
We talk about every game that has 2 Power 5 teams playing each other or any ranked team. So we ended up picking 32 games. Rob got, what was it, 22 right? And let me look. I'm a little behind.
Well, yeah. I had 8 losses, so
you were 24
right.
24 and 8. I was 23 and 9. Trey was 22 and 10, and Quentin was 21 and 11. And
All in all, very good.
usually,
I think this goes to show you that we know what we're talking about. So you guys out in YouTube land should be listening to us.
Yup.
we go in the order of who won for how we're gonna take off the segments. And even
But I'm
though,
getting tired of going first.
well, even
Okay.
though technically Rob got first on the pick'em, he forgot to pick some games, but they were obvious, and he needed a win, and so I went ahead and gave it to him. He will get the Dr. Squatch, but I think that's the only win he got this week. And so we're gonna go this week.
Them all.
We're gonna go.
I think the website unpicked them for me.
Yeah, it was the website's fault.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna give it to you. I gave it to Quentin last week, but this week we're gonna start with Quentin because he prophesized what happened almost. And so we're gonna get into our first segment. Texas. Dare I say it?
Don't do it. Don't say it.
No. Yeah.
Quentin?
Texas is back, aren't they? They're in
Nobody can hear that. You can't hear it.
Everyone can, not you.
Oh. I can hear it though. I can hear it. All right, okay. So
Quentin, lead us off.
it was probably the most interesting game of the day. There were two really interesting games. We're going to get into the other one later, but that was probably the most, or the second most surprising game of the day. Texas's defensive and offensive front were outstanding, and that's the hardest that's the hardest matchup they're gonna have all year, which is crazy that they played so well. They had Quinn Ewers for about a quarter and like 3 to 6
A quarter.
minutes.
He left the first quarter.
Yeah, it was just around a quarter, but I think he had 134 yards on 9 of 12 passing, and
the misses
was it
were
one
drops.
touchdown? They run it in.
He didn't score.
No, they got the
score,
touchdown. They got the touchdown after he went out.
Okay, but I think that if Quinn Ewers stays in that game, Texas has the opportunity to win that game pretty comfortably because he was playing out of his mind. Quinn Ewers is a very good quarterback. I think
he got that dog in him.
Yeah, he really does. I think part of the reason they kept him out, or what I was thinking during the game, is that this game, Stark said it before the game. He said this game doesn't matter to us for our end of the goal season. Like obviously they want to win the game. You never want to lose, but this game didn't really matter for them in their end of season goals, which is to be in Dallas for the Big 12 championship. And I think this was a big game morale booster for Texas. I don't think that any player on Texas went out with their head hung. Hudson Card played outstanding for getting put in against the number one team in the country.
Limping on one leg.
Yeah, he got hurt. He got banged up too, and like they still, there's a lot of questions for Bama with me now because they look bad. They look out of whack. There were 15 penalties for 100 yards.
Let me add something. I'll be the first to say I was shocked at how well Texas played. I actually gave Mathis props after the game, which is very rare on a Texas performance. But this is college football, and as much as I would hate to say it, A&M beat Alabama last year with our backup quarterback, and I'm not saying because Haynes Kings was the starter last year, but Team A beating Team B and Team B beating Team C does not mean Team A is going to beat Team C. And I think Texas played. They played very well. They were motivated, but I'm not going to go out and say if Quinn had not gone down, they would have statistically clobbered him because of how well he did in the first quarter. I mean, it could have very well. Alabama could have covered the spread.
No, Rob, I'm going to stop you.
This is crazy. This is crazy college football. There is no way. I promise you, Texas. as well as Texas played, they're going to have a bad game in the future.
Yeah. I'm not changing my season prediction right now. But in that game, I think I'm going to go out and say I think if Quinn plays, you win that game. I think that if they made some calls some separate ways, if you look at some of the stuff coming back, I think that probably 45% of the time, if you play that over again, Texas wins that game. Because their offense did nothing after Quinn went out. They were moving it, and they couldn't because they couldn't take the top off the defense. Alabama's secondary had no answers.
Mathis, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. If Quinn had stayed in the game, did Alabama let up because Quinn left the game? Or, my personal opinion is Alabama did not show up to play at all.
Yeah, they weren't prepared.
They showed that.
And
they were awful, but they're good enough to play bad and win. I think we'll all admit that. But they in Alabama's defense, they prepared for Quinn, and when he went down, did they know anything about Card at all?
Texas was outplaying them first, and they stuck around. And their defense, they didn't need an answer for Quinn, or they didn't need an answer for Carr because.
But look at Card's statistics. He did not have a stellar game. I think
that's what I'm saying.
Offense played horrible.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with Quinn getting hurt. I think if you have the same defensive performance that you had, regardless, because a quarterback getting injured on your offense does not affect your defense.
I feel like I can agree more with Mathis
emotionally it does. I think emotionally it does.
But their defense was already playing good. They had one breakaway play, and other than that, they had like 2 drives where they drove down the field.
I feel like I can agree
Texas
with Mathis
outplayed
them. Especially Quinn threw for 134 yards in the first quarter, and Hudson Card threw for 100 yards the whole game.
They didn't have an answer for him.
That's my point. Is Quinn going to throw for 520 yards if he stays in the whole game?
I'd say he would throw for 300 at least.
I think they get in the end zone more than once. And if you look at the game, if they got in the end zone more than once, they win.
Well,
because
Rob, Quinn Ewers doesn't play on defense.
They went in the red zone.
Defense shut them down. I don't think that there was any emotional. Impact.
I agree with all that, guys. I'm just saying. When your starting quarterback goes down, I think your defense steps up. I mean, it's all about momentum and everything. And Texas went in like I thought they would. That they led early in the game. They actually led longer than I thought they would. I think they had a lead going into halftime. But I don't know. Who knows? It could have been 35-32. Pick your team to win if Quinn had stayed in. I think Alabama did not show up to play, and they did enough to win. So, based on that, if Quinn had stayed in and gotten a couple of touchdowns, maybe Alabama's special teams or defense or even their offense would have stepped up and gotten more than they did, and still not play well. That's my whole point is that, this was a bad showing for Alabama. I think it was good for Texas, but I think, everyone that's going to proverbially say Texas is back. I'm not saying this because I don't like Texas. I'm just saying, they beat Notre Dame a few years back to go 1-0 to start the season, and they ended up, horrible.
I'm not saying it's good that you lost the game, but personally, I feel better about a healthy Texas team now than I did before.
I agree.
And
if I were a Texas fan, I would be super excited that we played as well as we did, and our starter wasn't in the game but for one quarter.
And here's what I
feel
think.
like this is a step in the right direction for Texas's program too, and it gives Quinn Ewers a few weeks to get back, and then I feel like with their morale being high, they could go into Dallas week 6 and possibly beat Oklahoma.
So that raises the next question. Have you guys heard about his injury update? Is he
4 to
out
6
this coming
weeks.
week?
4 to 6
They
weeks.
said 4 to 6, but they play Oklahoma in 4 weeks, and I think that they're saying that because there's no Quinn Ewers has been a Texas fan his whole life. There's no way he's gonna miss that game. I feel like there's no way he's gonna miss that game.
All right, just to
And
move on
also,
to the second Texas point really quick. Texas, don't let up, don't relax. Because if you come in overconfident against UTSA, who they got next week, then they're going to Lubbock to play Texas Tech. And Texas Tech looked pretty good in that Houston game.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
after that, you play West Virginia. You're not going to have your starting quarterback. Your backup, has one of his strengths is running the ball, being a little more mobile. Has an ankle injury, so he's going to be a little more stuck in the pocket. And so I think it might be possible that you slip up and drop one of those games if you go into it overconfident,
Comfortable.
little drunk off what success, even though it was a loss. But we start off with the winners in each segment most of the time, and we talked about Texas first.
let me build off your point that you just were talking about the Texas not being overconfident. Steve Sarkisian, his first point in his press conference today was that they need to avoid the rat poison of the praise that they're getting right now. And I think that's like super big to hear that from your head coach who had little to no success last year. And this is probably going to be a building point in his tenure at the program. For him to say that, I think that's super big.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking back a few years from now, if they end up pulling it through and show well in the SEC, they'll probably look back to this game as a turning point in the program for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If he stays,
Yeah.
if he makes it 4 or 5 years, this is definitely a potential turning point for him.
Yeah, I've been a Texas fan for a while. Just full disclosure to everyone watching, I've seen this song and dance before, and so I'm urging this team to not go into it the way other teams have. You have a big win, and they play to their competition the next week. You can't play within Alabama 1 point and then go and play UTSA within 1 point. You got to have a consistent level of you got to play that high level all the time. And moving on, we're going to get into one of our new segments. And before I do that, I'm going to show a picture of last week's episode just to show Quentin. Told him I'd put this in there. And
full disclosure, we can't see.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. You don't need to. You also didn't. It's probably good that you didn't see after some of these two A&M graphics I have coming up next. But we're gonna get into our new segment: biggest winners and losers. If I could get it pulled up, it's a little messy today. I apologize. Biggest winners and losers, and so we're gonna start off. Like I just said, we usually start off with winners, but some things are too apparent. And so, Rob, I apologize in advance. But once again, we have Quentin who picked it. And Rob, Quentin, and Trey, if you can't see, it's when Quentin took the A&M logo and turned it upside down.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Quentin, you want to lead us off? What do you got to say about A&M?
First thing I want to say, it's a little soliloquy. I am the biggest winner of this week. Easily. I'm the biggest winner. I'm AP number 1, and y'all can't deny it. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. I wanted to show my dominance just now. So, man, one thing that I have to say about A&M.
Feel good, little man. Feel good.
One thing
he's going to feel good
A&M,
for a long time.
Jimbo needs to take his play calling folder, throw it in the garbage, and give the play calling to someone else because they have way too many athletes to perform like they just did yesterday. They had the plays
2 days ago.
Rob, in College Station, the plays were 82 to 38. Appalachian State ran 82 offensive plays. They had the ball for 38 and a half minutes that game. They have A&M has way too many athletes for that to be excusable at all. And I think that is an absolute coaching problem at this point.
Yeah, you got out-coached
based on
bad.
those stats, that's an old 70-0. beat down by the Sooners to the Aggies about 15 years ago. That was a horrible game, and Mathis, you touched on this early. Last week I was super excited, not because A&M beat Sam Houston, but because that was probably the most exciting week one I have ever seen, and for the same reason, good for football. There was a lot of good games, a lot of good upsets, but man, this was as shocking to me for week one or week two as week one was good. You had, personally for me, you had Texas almost beating Alabama, but then you had Notre Dame losing to lowly Marshall at home, followed up shortly thereafter by the Aggies losing to Appalachian
Rob,
State.
we're gonna get into that in a minute. We're touching on A&M right now.
Well, I want to move on to bigger pictures.
Hey, no, but I haven't got to say what I need to say. We're not gonna let you just deject like that.
If I told you that Appalachian State would have gone 9 for 20 on third down, and they would have had 134 passing yards, you would have said, "Holy crap! The Aggies beat them by 50."
Yeah.
Yeah, you got out
Like
coached
that.
bad.
That is inexcusable.
Yeah,
it's hard to talk about because it is a very big moment in Jimbo Fisher's tenure.
well,
And
I picked
this is
A&M to
this
go
is a
what
very
10
big
and 2.
moment.
If you look at it, if you're losing this game and you have glaring issues, you didn't lose fluky. You
Yeah.
straight up lost that game up and down the field 4
They
quarters.
just outplayed them. They literally outplayed
You
them.
play Miami next week. Didn't look great in
And
the
then
first half,
Arkansas.
but they pulled it out in the second half. So you got
Yeah.
Miami. You could drop that game. You better not, but you might. Then after that, you got Arkansas. Then you got Mississippi State, and then you have Bama. You realistically could have a good chance of starting off 2 and 4.
Guys, this is without a doubt, it is definitely a wake-up call. And like Quentin said, is this, the Aggies, I'm not saying this because I went there because I love them, but they have some of the best players in the nation.
Yeah.
Is this
Easily, yeah.
is this because of the play calling? I mean,
It has to
they
be.
didn't make adjustments at all. The best the Aggies ever did was, thank God we tied them. We're at 7-all. We're tied. We're 14-all. They didn't make any adjustments at halftime. Is it time to change the quarterback? I mean,
I think the quarterback is an issue.
Jimbo's deal or is this Hayne King's deal?
I think it's a mix of
No,
both.
I think it's an absolute Jimbo problem.
I think it's a Jimbo problem first, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a change in quarterback.
I feel like it would benefit to see how both of them would play. I feel like those.
Because here's one thing: they haven't planned for
those
Max
two games
Johnson.
to see Max Johnson. That's what they should have played Max Johnson these past 2 weeks, in my opinion, just to see what he looks like because he's the quarterback on their roster that played last year in the SEC.
I
won a few games.
I guarantee you, they're both getting time with the first team offense this week.
Mm.
Yeah, you gotta be creative because they know everything you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not 2015.
Yeah, you realistically could start off 2 and 4 if you drop those 2
You
games.
could be 2 and 4 going into the bye.
Yeah.
And that's. Well, I don't want to talk about job
honestly,
security because I don't think he's going to lose.
With the competition, the SEC West, I mean, even if A&M beat Appalachian State, losing to Mississippi State isn't a real reality. I mean, we lost to them last year, but losing to Arkansas and losing to Alabama, that can happen any year. The way Arkansas is playing and the way Alabama's always played. But yeah, having lost to Appalachian State and now having a tough Miami.
Yeah, it doesn't help to schedule Miami. And I'm going to go ahead and throw up another graphic. Just I made this one. It's a new logo for A&M. I'm struggling.
I think you sent it to us already, right?
Yeah, I sent it to
Yeah,
you
he
already.
sent this
Rob
to
didn't
me
see it,
after.
but Rob, it's the
I think I've
A&M
seen
logo, but I moved the A and the M, and it says 8 and 4. And sorry, I made this before. I knew you were having a little bit of a rough time. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to our next. This one's a winner. one of the biggest winners of the week, Sun Belt Conference as a whole. Just to recap,
Shout out Sunbelt.
shout
Yeah.
out Sun Belt. You had
Yeah.
Rob. Now you got the heat off you now. So Notre Dame lost to Marshall.
Good.
I guess not quite.
I don't like the little Irish people in South Bend.
Appalachian State
We
beat
are Marshall. We are Marshall.
Yup.
Appalachian State had the biggest win of the week in my opinion. But we already covered that,
I don't
so we're
know.
not gonna.
You know, from the disparity and the difference in the two teams, I would say, I'm A&M was ranked higher than Notre Dame, but I think Marshall is a worse team than Appalachian State is one of the better G5 teams, and to me, I think Marshall beating Notre Dame is a bigger surprise than Appalachian State beating A&M.
No, I don't think so because I don't think
I
Notre
would-
Dame's as good
I
as
would agree
A&M.
with Rob on that.
I don't think Notre
I'd
Dame's is
say
good. I
it's a
think
toss-up
I think
between the
Appalachian
two.
State beat the better team than who Marshall beat.
Well, I mean, Appalachian State literally
remember-
just played UNC to overtime.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But I mean,
Almost.
this is a Notre Dame team that played within a touchdown of Ohio State.
And it also
Yeah.
could be a Notre Dame team that ends up like 8-4.
They could.
And
They
so
Hopefully worse.
if you look back at the end of the year, which one's going to be the bigger win? I guess that's something we can come back and look at. I think the Appalachian State had the bigger win. We're not going to
That will
spend
be
too
our
much time
year
on
in
them.
review.
We still have to touch.
Mathis, that will be our year in review
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, our quarterly
I have to
review.
get a University of Marshall jacket now or something. I just gotta. I
Bef-
have to rep it now.
Before we move on, we'll talk about him later, and him, you'll know who I'm talking about in a second. Nebraska
sure they already do.
lost to Georgia Southern. That's all we're gonna say. We're gonna touch on it a little bit later. Already talked. Notre Dame's one of the losers. They had
Yep.
absolutely no push for the O-line, and they had no quarterback and receiver cohesion. Quentin, what was the quote? The Notre Dame quarterback quote?
a Notre Dame fan said, "A bulldozer has been coming 2 miles an hour at us for the last 5 years about quarterback recruiting, and it finally caught up."
Yep.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
what
think
about Marcus Freeman now? I saw a
He's
stat
0-3.
on TV.
He's 0-3
He's
for his
lost
first
his,
3 games.
yeah.
that's never
One
happened at
last
Notre
year.
Dame.
Notre Dame is the first top 10 team.
To go 0-2. I think we
Yeah.
lost Trey, guys.
So,
Yeah.
what were Notre Dame's fans saying about Brian Kelly after the loss to FSU? I can't remember. What were they saying?
Oh, I don't remember, but it was something bad.
Yeah, it's
Who
about how.
dat?
I'm back.
Who dat?
Hey, I
Yeah.
put
How
a
they- how
put
they
a
mix-
crying
they won't miss
leprechaun
it,
on
yeah.
the screen, by the way.
Good.
All right. Well,
Also, I have another winner.
yeah.
Texas's medical staff winners. Whole team is in the is in the training room this week.
Yeah. All right.
They're getting their
You know
money's
what?
worth.
We're not really talking about all the winners and losers, but how about Kentucky? They're top 10 now after beating Florida.
Yeah, I don't think they should be ahead of Arkansas, but we'll get into that later. I think Kentucky played great, and I owe Mark Stoops an apology. They looked good. I didn't think they were going to be able to run the ball, but by the end of the game, Florida had no run defense, and I don't know how I could have seen this coming after what we saw out of Kentucky week 1, but Will Levis straight up outplayed Anthony Richardson.
Kentucky, they dominated that game. It was a 10-point win for Kentucky, but they looked like they controlled that game from start to finish.
Yeah. So we all picked wrong on that one. Arkansas looked good against South Carolina, and there was a 14-point game, but
The little Irish people are messing with my Wi-Fi. That's my fault.
yeah, Arkansas, I think they looked good.
They did.
Yeah, and I think that score is even slightly closer than what the game actually was. I didn't get to watch a whole lot of it, but I was able to flip in just for a little bit, and they looked good. I would be very nervous if I had to play them BYU.
Jefferson did something, guys. Jefferson did something in that game. I can't remember what it was, but it did not look good. I can't remember exactly what it was,
He
but
get hurt?
I don't know if he threw a pick six or what.
I can't remember.
I don't care. I'm high on Arkansas this year. Woo pig, guys. Woo pig. And I don't know if we'll touch on this later or not. I don't know what y'all have in store. Tennessee Pitt, that was a great game. It was an ugly game, but Tennessee was able to pull out the win. I think we all expected it. It was a little too close for comfort. And Pitt had an injury, but I don't think Pitt...
It was one of several games that went into overtime.
Yeah. I think
all
we're losing
Trey. Were winners this week.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, even with my Aggies losing, it was a great day of college football.
It was awesome.
For sure. And it finished real well. I thought the Baylor-BYU game was...
Did we lose Trey?
Exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Hey, moving on to our next segment. We got Scotty Frost. My man got fired. Rob, you got anything to say?
Well, starting the season, I wouldn't have thought that he would be fired as quickly as he was. He's what, 1-2? Explain to me about the buyout.
All right.
Was the deal that they avoided paying money to him if they fired him by a certain date?
Here's what happened. You, as a coach, when your contract is structured, if you get fired at one point, then they owe you this amount of money. And then after a certain amount of time, that buyout drops. And so it ended up dropping down. It was supposed to drop down October 1st. It was going to drop from $15 million buyout to $7.5 million. October 1st.
And so they didn't want to wait another couple of weeks.
And they were so fed up that they paid an extra $7.5 million to send him home now. Yeah. And I got to say two things. Good for everyone. All this was after we knew that he lost Northwestern. It's like putting your hand on a hot stove.
Yeah.
You're looking and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my hand is it's burning, it hurts. All you had to do was take your hand off. And everything, it's not going to be perfect like instantaneously, but that's when the healing can start. You can't start healing. You can't start going in the right direction until you get your hand off that stove. And shout out Scott Frost for playing, maybe on purpose, so bad that he got himself an extra $7.5 million to go home 3 weeks early.
Just like me.
Yep, that's City Boys up.
That's my conspiracy theory. My conspiracy theory is that Scott Frost, after the Northwestern game, me and Matt has talked about this. He purposely sold his season away for that extra $7.5 million. And see, if I was Scott Frost, I might do the same thing. I know. I mean, I've gone 16-31. I know I'm gone. See, I might just be awful. I should have put a third string. I'm a bag chaser.
Yeah, personally, I'd hire Scott Frost to be our executive producer on this podcast. That's the kind of leadership we need. Shout out Scott Frost. Shout out Nebraska.
And you know that they had a chance to win that game late with I think it was a game tying field goal.
They missed the game tying field goal. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't want to be too down on anyone. I hope they get a good coach. They're going to be able to coach.
I do.
Guys, the thing I'm a little disappointed in, I know the buyout and everything. If they had just waited one more week, I would have liked to see Scott Frost go up against Oklahoma this coming weekend.
I don't think it would have gone good. I think he lost the team, the locker room.
So how do you
Scott Frost to do good so bad?
So how do you think this plays out when they play Oklahoma this coming Saturday?
Oh, I thought you were wrong from the beginning. So
do you think they're going to be motivated now to get a coach maybe that the players want?
Well, they have an interim, so they probably won't hire a coach or get anyone going until December.
Right,
and so I don't think it really matters. I think they're just I guess they're going to play for the interim guy and see what happens. I think they want to play good because they want to play good. And I think they
I
have an
tell you, I
opportunity
tell you
to
what,
play better the
though,
rest of the year
the
because they have talent. They
the,
have
the,
out talent on
the,
a lot of teams they play.
the game is at 11 o'clock, and it will be up on one of the two big screens. Nebraska
Yeah.
will definitely be watching it.
Yeah, I'll pick Oklahoma in that game. I just thought there was
I
less
would
to
put
that.
my.
I'm not
I'd
going
put
to put
about
too much
$100
thought
on
into it.
Oklahoma.
Prove me
I
wrong, please.
originally
I
had
like Nebraska.
I originally had Nebraska winning that game, but that's going to be one of the few that I'm going to go ahead and revise for our weekly pick'em.
Yeah,
Yep.
I honestly have not stayed even remotely close to my preseason. I don't really care about being right a whole lot. I care about getting it right. So if you can show me that things have changed, then I will change my opinion because I want to have a good opinion. I don't want to stick to something dying on a hill that I don't really care that much about.
Hey,
Game
Mathis,
of
in
the
lighter
week.
news,
Let's get into it. Game of the week. Quentin, we're going to start off with you. If you had to pick any game, what was the game of the week and why?
for me, I think it just has to be the Texas Alabama game. I think it was just such a fun game to watch for me. I mean, and I would, as a Texas fan, I was not disappointed that they lost at the end. I was really happy that they played a good game.
Yeah.
Like I just thought it was a very good game. Very defensive game too. Neither offense was very outstanding in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rough. I think it would have been a lot different had they not lost the guy who was making their offense have some movement. He was moving the sticks, and they had troubles with that the rest of the day. Rob, you'll go next because I'll just give it to you.
Well, to me, I thought there were two games that were really, really exciting. I thought the BYU Baylor game went down to the wire. It went in overtime. And I hate to say this to Trey, but I thought the Texas Tech Houston game was also pretty exciting. And the way Tech won it in overtime, I mean, the quarterback just basically walked in. I thought, and what was neat about it was the Tech fans just charged the field after beating. I mean, what?
A Group 5 team.
Did they do it because they beat an old Southwest Conference rival?
No.
Did they do it because Houston was
That
ranked?
was their college football national championship. That was their national championship game.
Rob, so what's your pick?
I thought those two games were very exciting. Other than the three games that we talked about, Texas almost upsetting Alabama and Notre Dame and A&M losing, I didn't think there were any major surprises this week. I think Baylor losing after BYU losing their top two receivers was a little bit of a shock, but it was in BYU, it was in Provo.
Yeah.
I mean, BYU is a good team, and it's a tough place to play, so I didn't really see that being a major upset. But I thought those two games were probably the most exciting from a fan's perspective.
Rob, you have to pick one. You can't just take both.
Well, for Trey's sake, I'll go BYU Baylor because I was the only one that picked BYU out of the four of us. So,
all right, Trey, I'm gonna do it to you. I'm taking Texas Tech, upsetting Houston, overtime thriller. That Tech backup quarterback is better than their starter, and I don't think he's giving that job back. And I'm not really going to talk a whole long time on it. Personally, I think Houston lost that game more than Tech won it because they had some.
Did y'all notice, guys? Right after that game-winning rushing touchdown, did y'all notice how fast those goalposts came down?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're used to it. Those Tech fans are. They're something.
Because they got nothing better to do in Lubbock. There's nothing water up there.
Nothing to do but watch football and party.
One of you guys actually made a comment kind of like, oh my God, they tore the goalposts down.
Yeah, but I mean, for Houston, if you look at that game, you won by 2 the week before on kind of a fluky overtime. And you're not going to get that twice. You're going to be when you go to 2 overtimes, you're probably going to win one, lose one. And so I don't think you should be frustrated, upset. You got Kansas next week. We'll see how that goes. Kansas did not look bad.
No.
So we'll see how that goes. And I almost picked that game, But I'll go Houston at Tech as my game of the week. Trey, you got last pick.
Well, Quentin took my original choice, which was expected. So I'm gonna have to pick the Tennessee Pitt game. I feel like that was a pretty entertaining game the whole time. Tennessee played really well. Well, both teams played really well for the most part. I thought it was gonna be a blowout. I thought Tennessee was just gonna blow them out because of how Pittsburgh looked week one. But everybody just looked good, and that was a pretty entertaining game. It went into overtime, and that's my game of the week.
All right. We are way ahead of this schedule. This is under on the showtime. Is
Hey,
Gonna-
Matt,
gonna
I just
crazy.
got a notification of a picture of the Kentucky Wildcats eating an alligator.
that's crazy.
You can go look at Will Levis's Instagram, and I think.
Yep.
I'll go
That
look at it after the
that
show.
reminds me of the time Jackie Sherrill, when he left A&M, he went to Mississippi State, and I think his first or second year they played Texas, and he had a Longhorn castrated right before the game.
That's
Hey
just
Rob,
weird.
we're trying to keep this show PG, so maybe keep those thoughts to yourself next time. Round off the show, we're kind of wrapping it up here. We're gonna get into our last segment. We're gonna talk about the top 25 movements, and we're just gonna talk about teams. We're gonna talk any movement in the top 5. And so this week, Bama dropped from 1, and Georgia took over that number 1 spot. When I think is right. What do y'all think?
I don't think
It
there's
was
any
perfect. I like it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think the top
better
top
right
4 at least is perfect. Clemson, I
The
think they
only
should be a
thing-
little lower.
The only thing, actually, Sanford didn't score on Georgia, but Georgia did give up some points last week. That's the only disappointing thing about Georgia right now is they've given up some points. But
You mean
I think
3?
it's very deserved. I think Georgia is playing the best right now.
Yeah, they're the best
You're
in the
mad that
country
they're
right now.
allowing 1.5 points a game?
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'm not mad. I'm surprised.
All right. I don't know about y'all. Just tell me a just right, too low, or too high when I rattle some of these off. We'll get out of here pretty quick. Clemson,
Too high.
Too high.
too high.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
we're all
too
think
high.
they're a little too high. USC,
Too high.
I think
they're a
they're.
little bit too high.
I put them at 9,
Offense
but I like that.
crazy.
I like that area.
I think you got to put them at 7 just because the offense they've had, and they had two teams lose in front of them. So I think that aids in them moving up
They
because
did,
people
but-
had to move down.
But they only beat Stanford by 13.
They were in control the whole time though, and I told y'all before Stanford was going to be able to move the ball on them because that defense is a concern.
Yeah.
But I don't
I
think it's
think-
as much of a concern in the Pac-12. I think they might go 10-2 or so.
Yeah, I can
I
see
think
that.
USC's overranked. I think they're getting a little bit of bias because everyone likes USC, the writers.
I think they
That's
just
just my
played better than other
opinion.
teams.
I mean, their offense is averaging 60 points. So.
All right. Oklahoma State, I think it's kind of the same. They just moved up because teams around them dropped.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I
I like
like
it.
that. I
think
think
it's
Oklahoma
fun for
State's a
them.
really good team. Kentucky,
I'm not mad at it. I
Kentucky-
think they're a little
too
too high.
I think it's too
Kentucky
high.
and Arkansas both moved up quite a bit.
I think
Kentucky moved
Arkansas is
up 11.
I think Arkansas is better than Kentucky, but
I would
I'm
agree.
not mad at those spots. I think that's about right. Michigan State, once again, teams are just moving up because people are dropping like flies around them.
Yeah.
BYU
To be
at
honest,
12, I think is a
I like
great spot. If they beat Oregon, you got to put them in the top 10.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
feel
I
like-
think that's great.
Hey,
They're the Group 5 team this year that has a chance of making the CFP, in my opinion.
they're not a
Or-
group of 5 team.
I
They're,
mean,
they're
independent- well, yeah,
independent, but
but-
they're considered Power 5. They are.
Yeah.
They
As of now, I would say that if you're not, I would say BYU probably has the best chance of making the playoffs if you're not in the Big Ten or
Yeah.
the SEC.
Yeah, because they're
Yeah.
good.
I mean,
And they have a
BYU
hard
plays
enough schedule.
Really tough schedule.
Yeah.
They play a rough schedule.
All right, Miami, I think that's about right. We're not going to talk about teams that have moved up
Yeah.
or down one or two spots.
I
Tennessee,
think Arkansas is too low.
yeah, I think so too. Tennessee,
I think Tennessee.
great spot.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Baylor,
That's not where they
I
are.
think, yeah, you can't punish them too much for losing to a team you think is better than them. I think BYU at 12. I think a close loss, Baylor at 17.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good spot. Florida, I thought was too high last week. I think they should be in the 20s.
Yeah, I would agree.
Wake,
It's a good spot for them right now, though.
yeah, Wake, I think that's a good spot. I might be pretty wrong on them. I had them losing more games, but I would have changed. I'd changed my predictions. I had them at about 8-4, 9-3 before Sam Hartman went out, but he's back already, so that could be the team I'm most wrong on. Texas and Penn State.
Did we talk about Baylor? Baylor dropped pretty far. I mean, they did lose to BYU, who's highly ranked now, but
yeah, we talked about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about Baylor.
Rob, were you just zoned out?
I didn't hear you mention Baylor.
We talked about him for like a minute.
Well, previously, but not in the rankings.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, all right. Texas.
Texas and Penn State both moved into the rankings, and I think that's a good spot for both of them. Texas,
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned that number 21 next to that team is going to give them some overconfidence, some comfortability, which you do not need. I hope Sarkisian is able to cap a lid on it, keep everything in-house, and I think if that's the case, then Texas could be a really good team. Maybe my favorite pick right now, if they can keep it together for the Big 12.
I think it's a little bit too high for them right now.
Yeah.
They have I was looking at their Oklahoma game, and they have a 60% win chance to win that game.
If you're dropping Bama one spot for that close of a game, then you have to think something of Texas.
Yeah.
And so I think 21's a fine spot, especially knowing who got dropped. Pitt dropped 6 spots. Personally, I don't think they're a top 25 team because you barely beat West Virginia, who lost to Kansas. And so I just don't think you're that good. Texas A&M.
That was too low.
I
think they're too low.
I think they're a little too low. I'd maybe have them at that Texas spot, maybe at about 21. But
I'd probably put them 19 to 21.
Two teams I would put in this ranking are, if I had to move some teams around, I would probably put North Carolina and App State in the rankings. And
I think you have to put App State in.
And they didn't. I don't understand it.
They played a top 25 team to 2 points, and then they beat a top 10 team.
They look good.
I can't argue with that. Did y'all notice the first team out
was
Marshall? Yeah.
I think that's really a lot of just like shock factor.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we have for y'all. That competitive balance everyone's complaining about for that crying for that 12-team playoff. Maybe we have it now. And Alabama looked human. Everyone has looked human so far, except for Georgia. And
not a very wide open year. Like,
hey guys, right now in a 12-game playoff, you got to pick one group of 5. Who is the group of 5 that's going in? And right now BYU's number 12. Let's knock them out. So the top 11 make it. Who is the group of 5 right now that's in the 12-team playoff?
App State.
Right. Yeah, App State.
Hey, and Rob, it's 6 conference champions and then 6 at large.
Right. So the 6th conference champion is a group 5.
Has to be. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying it's your top. It's not just your top 11 or 12. You have all your conference.
I'm just saying, but based on where we are right now, you probably figure in general your top 11 teams are going to make it, and then you're going to throw in a G5 championship team.
Yeah,
right
I would. Yeah, it's App State right now, but there's some other teams that could get in there. If Houston, if that Tech game is their one loss, if Cincinnati runs the table, if Marshall,
and honestly, guys, conference play hasn't started, so any of the G5s are still up for that spot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting year. That's all we have for y'all. I appreciate y'all watching. If you would, it would help us out if you
Mathis, what are we talking about next time? Our pick 'em?
Yeah,
next podcast?
Yeah, next podcast is our prediction episode for week 3.
Week 3. Okay.
Yeah, so
Shout out Jackson State.
shout out Jackson State.
That's all I gotta say.
If y'all would, we'd appreciate it if y'all like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments or questions in the comments or any of our social media DMs. That's all we have for you today. Appreciate y'all watching. Until next time.